Isaac's life begins not with his own birth, but with the promises made to his father, Abraham. In Genesis 12, God called Abraham to leave his homeland and follow him to a land that he would show him. God promised Abraham that he would make him a great nation. But Abraham and Sarah remained childless for decades. Isaac's birth would be a direct fulfillment of that promise. In Genesis 17:15 to 17, God tells Abraham that Sarah would bear him a son, even though she was well past the age of childbearing. Abraham laughed. Later in Genesis 18:12, Sarah also laughed when she heard the news. But God asked, "Is anything too hard for the Lord?" Genesis 18:14. In Genesis 21:1 through 3, the long-awaited son was born. The Lord visited Sarah as he had said, and the Lord did to Sarah as he had promised. And Sarah conceived and bore Abraham a son in his old age. Abraham called the name of his son, who was born to him, whom Sarah bore him, Isaac. The name Isaac means he laughs, a reminder of the astonishment and joy surrounding his miraculous birth. Isaac's early years were marked by joy and celebration. In Genesis 21:6 through 7, Sarah said, "God has made laughter for me. Everyone who hears will laugh over me." But Isaac's childhood was not without difficulty. In Genesis 21:8 through 10, Sarah saw Ishmael, Abraham's son through Hagar, laughing at Isaac. She demanded that Hagar and Ishmael be sent away so that Isaac alone would inherit Abraham's blessings. Although it grieved Abraham, God confirmed to him that Isaac was the child of promise, Genesis 21:12, though he also assured Abraham that Ishmael would become a great nation. One of the most well-known and significant moments in Isaac's life comes not through his own actions, but as a child placed in a test of faith for his father. In Genesis 22, God tested Abraham by commanding him to offer Isaac as a burnt offering on Mount Moriah. Isaac, at this point, was old enough to carry the wood and question what was happening. In Genesis 22:7, he asked, "Behold, the fire and the wood, but where is the lamb for a burnt offering?" Abraham replied, "God will provide for himself the lamb." Genesis 22:8. At the moment Abraham raised the knife, God intervened and provided a ram caught in the thicket. This event not only proved Abraham's faith, but also served as a powerful foreshadowing of Christ, the true Lamb whom God would provide. As Isaac matured, we learn more about his character through the choices he makes and the life he leads. Unlike his father Abraham or his son Jacob, Isaac's life is relatively quiet. Yet the scriptures show him as a man of peace, prayer, and obedience. In Genesis 24, Abraham sent his servant to find a wife for Isaac. This chapter is filled with prayer and providence. Abraham's servant prays that God would show him the right woman by a specific sign, and God answers. Rebekah, the granddaughter of Nahor, Abraham's brother, fulfills every part of the servant's prayer. When Rebekah arrives and meets Isaac, the Bible says in Genesis 24:67, "Then Isaac brought her into the tent of Sarah his mother, and took Rebekah, and she became his wife, and he loved her." Isaac's marriage was marked by God's direction and by love. In Genesis 25:21, we see Isaac as a man of prayer. Rebekah was barren, and Isaac prayed to the Lord for her. The Lord heard his prayer, and she conceived. This moment shows Isaac's faith and his dependence on God, mirroring Abraham's walk before him. The result of that prayer was the birth of twins, Esau and Jacob. The story of Jacob and Esau begins with struggle even in the womb. Rebekah was told by God in Genesis 25:23, "Two nations are in your womb. The older shall serve the younger." This prophecy set the stage for the rest of Isaac's family narrative. Isaac favored Esau, while Rebekah favored Jacob, a division that would bring tension and eventual deception into their family. Isaac's middle years are marked by both blessing and opposition. In Genesis 26, a famine arises, and Isaac goes to Gerar in the land of the Philistines. There, the Lord appears to him and reaffirms the covenant he had made with Abraham. God says in Genesis 26:3-4, "Sojourn in this land, and I will be with you, and will bless you. I will multiply your offspring as the stars of heaven." But Isaac, like his father before him, falls into fear and lies about Rebekah, claiming she is his sister, Genesis 26:7, afraid that the men of the place would kill him because she was beautiful. This pattern repeats what Abraham had done in Egypt, and later with Abimelech. Yet even with this sin, God's blessing remains upon Isaac. Isaac's life in Gerar is marked by contention over wells. As he reopened the wells of his father Abraham, the herdsmen of Gerar quarreled with Isaac's servants over them. Isaac named one well Esek, meaning contention, and another Sitnah, meaning enmity. But instead of fighting, Isaac moved and dug another well. This time there was no argument, and he called it Rehoboth, saying, "For now the Lord has made room for us, and we shall be fruitful in the land." Genesis 26:22. This shows Isaac's peaceful nature. He chose not to fight, but to move forward and trust that God would provide. Later, the Lord appeared to Isaac again and confirmed his promises. And Isaac built an altar and called upon the name of the Lord. Genesis 26:24-25. These moments show Isaac's personal relationship with God and his ongoing trust in the covenant passed down from Abraham. In Genesis 27, we come to one of the most dramatic and heartbreaking events of Isaac's life. He had grown old and blind, and he called Esau to give him the blessing of the firstborn. Rebekah, remembering God's prophecy and favoring Jacob, devised a plan for Jacob to receive the blessing instead. Jacob deceived his father by pretending to be Esau, wearing goatskins and bringing food prepared the way Esau would have made it. Isaac, confused and unsure, eventually blessed Jacob. When Esau returned and discovered what had happened, he cried out bitterly. Isaac trembled violently when he realized he had been deceived, but he did not revoke the blessing. Instead, he confirmed it, saying in Genesis 27:33, "Yes, and he shall be blessed." This moment shows Isaac's recognition that God's will had been accomplished, even through deception. He later gave Jacob another blessing in Genesis 28:3-4, sending him away to find a wife from his mother's family and reaffirming the Abrahamic covenant. Isaac lived to see his sons take different paths. Esau took Canaanite wives, which brought grief to Isaac and Rebekah. Genesis 26:35. Jacob left to find a wife among his relatives and later returned with a large family and great wealth. Although Isaac's life was not marked by the same drama or wanderings as Abraham's or Jacob's, it was a crucial link in the chain of God's promises. Genesis 35:27-29 records the end of Isaac's life. And Jacob came to his father Isaac at Mamre. Now the days of Isaac were 180 years. And Isaac breathed his last, and he died, and was gathered to his people, old and full of days. And his sons Esau and Jacob buried him. Though there had been division and deception between the brothers, they came together to bury their father. It was a moment of peace, fitting for a man who lived much of his life in quiet faith and trust in God. Isaac's legacy is rich, even if his story is often quieter than others. He was the promised child, a miracle birth pointing to the future coming of Christ. He was a man of prayer, interceding for his wife. He was a man of peace, choosing to walk away from conflict. He was a man of blessing, passing down the covenant that would eventually lead to the Messiah. In the New Testament, Isaac is mentioned as a man of faith. Hebrews 11:20 says, "By faith, Isaac invoked future blessings on Jacob and Esau." Paul in Galatians 4:28 refers to Christians as children of promise like Isaac. Isaac's life reminds us that faithfulness is not always loud. Sometimes it is quiet, steady obedience that God uses to fulfill his greatest promises. If you enjoyed learning about the Bible, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment about what story you want to see next.